I've wanted so desperately to apologize every day to darker skinned actresses, to say, I'm sorry that I'm the one chosen. My mama looks like you. It's been very painful to have women that look like my mum feel like I'm not representing them, that I'm taking from them, taking their men, taking their work, taking their truth. I didn't mean to. I was worried about my light-skinnedness because my light-skinnedness has been more problematic than being black. Is being light-skinned has been way more problematic than being black in my life. Literally, I was black in England. I mean, dark-skinned. And so then I went to America and I was dark-skinned. I thought I was dark-skinned and I would describe myself as dark-skinned. It's like, you're light-skinned. And suddenly I was someone that, you know, you for being light-skinned. I got more prejudice from black people. That prejudice that I've received, it doesn't matter that it's from African-American women more than anyone else. It doesn't matter.
See, I was working on another video and then Thandie Newton posted this video. I'm going to be very frank with you. I find it very interesting that a woman who is not even from the United States claims that most of her racial oppression came from women from the United States when she only comes here to really just to work. She's primarily located in London. But I digress. I'm putting the cart before the horse, and it's causing a fucking disaster. At the beginning of this video, you watch Thandie Newton offer an apology to dark-skinned black women, apologizing for, well, fucking their man, taking their job, and basically stealing their history. I mean, that's basically what she said, right? I mean, she definitely put flowers on top of it and they had the music in the background, but the general consensus is, black women, I'm sorry for shitting on you. I'm the chosen one. Now, Pumpkin, let's be honest with you. Thandie, you were probably the most, how do I say this in a nice way? Of all the light-skinned / biracial women of the 90s and the 2000s era, you were the most forgettable. And that's probably why they had you in all these ratchet-ass roles. And we're going to discuss the roles in a little bit. Thandiwe Newton, or Thandie Newton as we know her, was born in Westminster, London, and she grew up in a mixed-race family. Her father was from England, her mother was from Zimbabwe, and previously it was reported that she was born in Zambia, which she was not. She was actually born in the UK. Interesting that she had that in her background because she also went by Thandie and not Thandiwe. It seems like even in the very early stages of her career, she was trying to make it very nebulous as to where she was from, family life was like, and this isn't uncommon for people who are mixed race. For mixed race people, they have to ask themselves this question: do I go into the long details of my ethnicity and my family heritage to strangers, or do I just simplify things, make it easier? Thandie also had to worry about a very whitewashed Hollywood, especially at the time that she emerged. When you come across many of her interviews, when she describes her ethnicity or her culture or how she views herself, it varies from mixed to being black, to being brown, to being pale. She has a variety of ways to describe her ethnic identity, and that's kind of a problem because honestly, I feel like as you age, you're supposed to have a good understanding of who you are. And if you don't have that understanding, you usually gravitate towards more of this self-hatred. In that cringy ass apology, she mentioned something about, feeling sorry that she was the chosen one and she got all these Hollywood roles over all of these black American women. Let's look at these roles. In 1991, she was in a movie called Flirting. Nothing remarkable about that role. The next big role was in 1994, where she played, I'm imagining some type of mulatto or Creole slave in Interview with a Vampire. Now, in this movie, she plays Yvette. It is implied by their body language that Louis, played by Brad Pitt, and Yvette had some type of sexual relationship. She even speaks to him like she can give him some type of feedback on how to run his plantation, which, let's be very frank, women didn't really give men that kind of advice at all back in those days, let alone some mixed race slave. So it was a very interesting dynamic. Oh, he eventually kills her because, that's how those relationships end in Hollywood. The next big movie she was in was 1995's Jefferson in Paris. Now, another time she's playing a mixed race slave. slave. This time she's playing Sally Hemings. Now, this movie was supposed to be about Sally Hemings and Thomas Jefferson's time in Paris. And let's be very frank, it's a very romanticized version of what happened. Because if I'm not mistaken, Sally Hemings was 14 and Thomas Jefferson was well into his 40s. So he molested her while they were in Paris. That's kind of what that was, so let's not romanticize it. But these are the kind of movies she was in. In 1997, she was a basshead. Played a character by the name of Cookie. I think Tupac gave her some like bad dope or something and she overdosed. Are we seeing a theme here? It's these, Jezebelish, crack baby kind of roles. In 1998, she starred opposite of Oprah Winfrey and Danny Glover in Beloved. Now, this movie is a very long movie to break down, and I don't want to spend most of this video trying to explain it to you. The brief synopsis: she played a childlike mulatto ghost spirit who basically was the product of slave rape. So yeah, that happened. And 80% of the movie, she was butt-ass naked. Coochie hair everywhere. It's one of those kind of scenarios where it's like, this isn't sexy because everything about it seemed like an exploitation. See, she played a character who was a ghost of a child in an adult body. And there was a very cringy, weird scene with Danny Glover having sex with her where she used this childlike affect. We're not even going to get into all the weird shit Hollywood is trying to say with that scene. But that was the kind of movie she was in. Fucking crazy movie, right? Well, it's sort of based on a real story. The story was based off of Margaret Garner, a slave who died in 1858. Gardner and her family escaped slavery up north through the frozen Cincinnati River, but they were apprehended by the U.S. Marshals. See, back in those days, even though Ohio, a northern state which outlawed slavery, the U.S. Marshals could come up to that state and still reclaim slaves. In fact, there was usually a bounty associated with it. Rather than allow her daughter to return back to slavery, Margaret Garner murdered her child. The trial was a hot mess because it was a question of, well, you have a slave who we don't consider a person who killed another slave who we don't really consider a person. So where's the legality there? Definitely encourage people to look up that because it really sets the tone of how people were viewed at that time and how these policies have rippled throughout history. Beloved dropped. Thandie was known for these kind of roles. She was always playing these kind of weird, slavish, temptress roles. And people were starting to criticize her. See, Black Hollywood was really small. It was significantly smaller back in the 90s. And if you were known for a certain type of role, it became a part of your identity. Let's keep it G. The 90s was a different era. And it was really hard to make it back in those days. I mean, Thandie, you should know better than anyone. In an era where actresses like Aaliyah, Nia Long, Jada Pinkett, Megan Good, Halle Berry, Lynn Whitfield, and Vanessa Williams all were making plenty money, more money than you. I mean, I can see why you had a lot of competition with Black American women. Hell, even the Layla Rashans and Elisa Bonets and the Stacey Dash, even the Lisa Rays, they were kind of doing better than you out in these streets. So this idea that, you experienced all this oppression from Black women, it's just not real. You were a Hollywood actress and you were in competition with lots of Black females for the same roles. And guess what? Many of them were light-skinned, some of them were brown-skinned, some of them were mixed race. And guess what? That's a very competitive environment. But you weren't oppressed by them. They did not put you in positions where you couldn't progress in life, because clearly you're still on television. What you did feel oppression from was from that white male director who you described sexually groomed you since your teens.
I found when I was a 16-year-old, fresh from boarding school, going out into on the casting couch, I was definitely objectified to an extreme. And when I
was it the way you made you feel? You were made to feel,
yeah,
or the way you were treated?
The way I was made to feel, the way I was exploited, and the kinds of roles and the kinds of things I was expected to do in auditions. I mean, there was one horrific incident where I went back for a second audition. It was a screen test. There were two other people in the room, the director, who I'd seen previously, and the casting director, who was a woman. And the director asked me to sit with my legs apart. The camera was right between, positioned where it could see up my skirt, to put my leg over the arm of the chair, and before I started my dialogue, think about the character that I was supposed to be having the dialogue with, and how it felt to be made love to by this person. And I was thinking, this is so strange. Why would I need to do that? But this is the director. He is talking. There's the casting director.
It must be normal.
It must be normal. I'm 18 years old, and I'm thinking this is obviously something that I was in a protected. There were boundaries. And 3 years later, I was at the Cannes Film Festival, and my husband and I bumped into this rather drunk producer, a British producer, who mentioned the director that I had this audition with, and he looked very sheepish and walked away. And my husband grabbed him later and said, why did you start to say something and then didn't? And it turned out that the director who went on to make the film and who I was auditioning for used to show that video late at night to interested parties at his house. A video of me touching myself with a camera up my
So you were
skirt.
abused, but at the time it didn't feel like
And
it.
that was in a professional environment.
For many of the people you're trying to help, that's an inspiring story because you've obviously done so well from it. And you're
What would
able
I
to
have done
talk
about
about
that?
it.
Here's the thing. What does a person do? What does a young woman do in that situation? Obviously, I shouldn't care about getting the job, number one. Absolutely not acceptable behaviour.
You have to realise it's wrong as well, don't you?
Also, as an 18-year-old girl, perhaps the older woman in the room should have put her job on the line and said, I don't condone this behaviour. It's not just about, this is the thing that Stella Creasy was saying today in Parliament Square, it's not about the person that's been abused, it's not just their role to say enough, it's about the people around. How much are the people that witness, how much are they perpetrators of the crime? It's a responsibility that we all need to recognise our part in trying to be aware.
Is that the solution then, would you say? Awareness, largely?
I think awareness and having it be made a number one priority. I mean, it's really bizarre when you think that violence against women isn't a number one priority in the world. I've talked about it before as being a kind of species suicide. If your violence towards women, abuse of women, denigration of women, is all of those things are happening to humanity, to our future. And of course there are reasons behind it. I do think often about the perpetrators of the crimes and what's going on through their minds and their bodies as they wreak awful havoc on the bodies of women. And there is obviously there is male trauma at the heart of this, and we need to focus on that also. But I think that what's been really interesting about 1 Billion Rising is it's not just women standing up, it's men standing up too. What happened in Delhi, thousands of men standing up and looking out for their male community. We need, it's on our watch. We need to literally be keeping watch, and then we will arrest this problem.
Thandie, your oppressors were white. I'm sure that there were black, mixed-raced, light-skinned American girls who didn't like you. You're probably their competition. And God bless those souls who wanted your position and beloved, to be quite honest with you. To have to hump Danny Glover. I pray for those souls who wanted that role. But that's beside the point. The fact is that even if you had beef with these people, I don't buy that you experienced any type of systemic oppression from them, because they don't have the power to oppress you. They have the power to not talk to you. They have the power to talk shit about you behind your back. But sweetheart, we have to understand the difference between systemic oppression and bitches just not liking you. And honestly, at this stage of the game, you should have gotten over that. Like, you should be way past the point where randos and their opinions really matter to you. Your apology wasn't an apology. It was that shade that British people enjoy throwing. It's that pseudo empathy with an insult hidden in the center of it. So I don't know what movie you're trying to promote. I'm not watching it. If you like the content, like and subscribe.
I just want to apologize to all of the women who are doggies. I didn't. I'm sorry. When my mom's a doggy. My mom's a doggy, and I don't know, every time I think about my mom being a doggy, I cry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that nobody wants to fuck you or that nobody wants to cast you. I don't know if you've ever seen The Matrix, but it's not easy being the one that is chosen. I'm so sorry for being prettier than you. I'm so sorry. It's not my intention. I am so sorry that nobody wants to hire you. Cast more darkies. What did you say about my mom? She's a darkie, yes.
PM Dawn.